Hey everybody, just Derek here today from D&J's Epic Quest with a different type of episode for everyone here. I'm going to talk to you today about a book that I just finished. It is The Advent of Winter. Here is a picture of it, or the cover for the book itself. I took off I don't know what you want to call it, the sleeve or the cover for it. This is the naked hardcover. Blue painted edges on the pages. A nice bookmark with it, a ribbon bookmark as well. Really a nice physical copy of a book to have on the shelf. It looks great. This was organized by Don McDermott back in 2023, and this was the first Kickstarter that I have backed, and I've done a number of them since then, and discovered it's a really great way to find some books, some cool editions, special editions, and that type of thing. And like the name implies here, it is a advent calendar of sorts, just with 24 short stories instead of chocolates or beers or what have you. Before I get into the book here, I just want to talk about why I want to do this type of an episode. So I've had a little bit of a push on it to do something like this. And nothing major. It's not like I'm being forced to do it or anything like that. But Jim from Fantasy for the Ages and Matt from Go Read Books and we read Dark Bloom. We talked to author Molly McCobb, and we did our own episode on it as well. We're going to continue doing this, roughly one book a quarter or so. And so the next one we're going to do is Lightfall, a vampire type book. And Jim had suggested that when we finish reading that book, we each do our own little solo episode on the book before we come together and talk about it. So this is kind of the kickoff for that. So it's going to be pretty bare bones, and I think that's kind of how I'm going to title these episodes, is bare bones with me and whatever the title of the book is. So if it's got that feel, that's because that's kind of how it's intended. I hope everybody still enjoys this and likes it, though. And just a little background onto some further reasoning why I want to do this. Justin and I both love to read. We read The Wheel of Time mostly together, as middle schoolers and high schoolers and that type of thing. And then that kind of tapered off, as we were young adults and everything and figuring life out. And now we've come back together and are reading Malazan together, which is a ton of fun. Love doing it. But I still want to read other things as well, and I'm sure Justin does also. It's just, it's kind of a matter of time. His kids are a little younger than mine. He's got 3 kids versus 2. So, there's some differences in our lives where maybe I've got a little bit more time to do this type of thing, especially since I don't have to edit the Malazan episodes. I know that sucks up a lot of his time. So, but I love to read. I want to discover new worlds. I want to read new stories. I want to do all those things. Pretty sure it was George Martin who had said that a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who never reads only lives once, or that's pretty close to the quote, if that isn't it exactly. So I want to share my journey, my experience reading these books, what I feel in these stories. Fantasy and sci-fi are just my 2 probably favorite genres of books to read. And a big part of that is, these authors, they can make up whatever they want. Nobody can tell them that it's wrong. There's no rules to it. I just like getting lost in that, the freedom of it. And it's kind of a chance to escape, which, with the way life can be sometimes you just need that, if it's half an hour or whatever the time frame you can dedicate to reading, just to get away for a little bit, get lost in your own thoughts and these other problems, these other worlds, and that type of thing. So, but as far as The Advent of Winter goes, 24 different authors here. I had only read one of these authors' works previously, and that was H.C. Newell, because Justin and we read the first book in her Fallen Light series, The Curse of the Fallen. Her short story was not tied to that series at all. She just was the only one I was familiar with. A lot of these other authors, I did have their books or some of their books on my to-be-read list. I still, to this point, have not read any other ones, I'm pretty sure, without looking at each author listed here. Some of these stories, these short stories in the book, are just standalone short stories. Others are tied to the author's other works, their other series. But I never felt like I had anything spoiled by reading these short stories. There's only two that I can remember off the top of my head that I know are tied to other series: Ryan Cahill's and Andrew D. Meredith's. Having not read them, I don't feel like anything was given away. These just seemed like kind of bonus stories set in the world. I don't even know if these characters will appear in their other series or not, or if they're just secondary, tertiary characters, and now they're getting a moment to shine, that type of thing. I Out of these 24 stories, there was only one or two that didn't quite hit for me, and I don't want to say they were bad because they weren't. They didn't quite resonate with me the same way as the others did. And some of that I think is just a short story, I think, is hard. You have to get, a beginning, a middle, and an end in a short amount of time. There's not a lot of room to explain things. So you got to get dropped in, hit the ground running, and make it all work. And I don't think any of these stories lacked that or didn't do a good job. For whatever reason, I just didn't quite connect with like two stories tops. And again, I don't think they were bad. They just didn't work for me. I'm sure that there's others who love these stories, and I think that's great. I don't think these are bad authors by any means either. But I did enjoy everything in the book. It was a lot of fun to read. I read most of the time I'd read like two of these a day, maybe three, depending on how much time I had to just, take a chunk out of the book at a time. A few of my favorites out of these short stories: Soul Shard by Thiago Abdallah, Innocence Lost by H.C. Newell, An Act of Patience by H.L. Tinsley, and Before the Snow Melts by Andrew D. Meredith. This book was on Kickstarter once it was funded. Obviously, this book wasn't going to arrive to anybody by the December of 2023, so the stories were sent out digitally at first before the book itself was put together and mailed out. It took a little while to get, but it was well worth the wait. I didn't read any of these digitally except for one, and that was Innocence Lost by H.C. Newell, because she's a good friend of Justin and mine. We've read her book. She's been on all the episodes that we had for her book except for the first one, and so I was really excited to read it. It was probably my favorite story out of the 24, and I don't think that was because, we are friends with her. It was really that good. I think even if I hadn't read her book, Curse of the Fallen, it still would be my favorite. It really hit home to me as a parent, and, worst fears of something that could happen to your kids. It really struck with me that way. It was really well written, and I really could just visualize everything. Yeah, that one was my favorite, but again, I enjoyed all these. Some just more than others. I wouldn't even give any of the couple that I didn't like as much a bad rating. They were still 3 stars, I would say. They were still good. They just weren't like my cup of tea, basically. As I was reading these stories, I had this thought, and I don't know if anything like this is in the works or if I can speak it into existence and kind of manifest it here this way. But I think it would be really cool to see 3 more anthologies so that we can have a set for all the seasons. And I tried to brainstorm a little bit to think of some thoughts. So like spring, I thought like where this book, the winter, is like blue and white. So spring, I thought like green, and themes of stories around like growth, new life, maybe something like that. Summer was maybe a little harder, but like color, I would think like yellow, and stories themed around like vibrance, heat. That one was the hardest of the 3 for me to think of. Maybe somebody else has some other ideas, something you could do with that. And then fall, autumn, thinking like maybe red or brown, decay, end of life, or maybe some sort of harvest theme, something like that. But that is something I would definitely love to back and just have these short story anthologies, one for each season. I think would be really neat and would look good on somebody's bookshelf. So that's all I've got for you today, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this, listen to me ramble. I had some things jotted down here to kind of keep myself on track, but a lot of it is just kind of me thinking about this and wanting to branch out and try something a little bit different. So if anybody has any pointers, if anybody has any feedback, don't be afraid to shoot it back my way. I'm always looking to improve. I want to do better. I want to be the best that I can at this. This being my first time doing this, I feel pretty good about it. I don't feel weird, and that was something I was kind of worried about in my head, is that I'm going to feel awkward doing this. And it is a little unusual, again, to just see myself on the screen by myself, talking to myself, but I already feel like I'm kind of over that. So as I finish books in the future, you can look forward to more episodes like these. They're probably not going to be real long, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. And, I'll talk about my thoughts on the book. This one, a little harder to talk about all the individual stories since there's 24, but I would definitely recommend, if you can find this, I would think you can probably find physical copies somewhere still. And then digitally, I'm sure you can get them digitally on Kindle. I wouldn't think that would be a problem at all. But highly recommend this. Check it out. Let me know what you think of the video. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.